نعمة اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا وصلى الله على النبي الكريم. Okay, so we have a lot to cover. We only have about an hour until Salat al-Asr, and then from there to Maghrib about another hour. So not that much time is remaining today. We'll see what we can get through, inshallah, and then we'll, inshallah, just go a little bit faster, inshallah, to get through the word. Okay. So with that stated, let's move on to Hadith number 4. So we'll do the same thing, so I'll go ahead and read it, inshallah. This is page 7. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. عن أبي عبد الرحمن عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال حدثنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو الصادق المصدوق إن أحدكم يجمع خلقه في بطن أمه 40 يوما نطفة ثم يكون علقة مثل ذلك ثم يكون مضغة مثل ذلك ثم يرسل إليه الملك فينفخ فيه الروح ويؤمر ب4 كلمات بكتب رزقه وأجله وعمله وشقي أو سعيد والله الذي لا إله غيره إن أحدكم لا يعمل بعمل أهل الجنة حتى ما يكون بينه وبينها إلا ذراع فيسبق إليه الكتاب فيعمل بعمل أهل النار فيدخلها وإن أحدكم لا يعمل بعمل أهل النار حتى ما يكون بينه وبينها إلا ذراع فيسبق عليه الكتاب فيعمل بعمل أهل الجنة فيدخلها رواه البخاري ومسلم. Can we have someone read the translation? Inshallah.
Abu al-Rahman Abdullah bin Masud anhu reported the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the most truthful, the most trusted, told us, verily the creation of anyone of you takes place when he is assembled in his mother's womb. For 40 days he is as a drop and he becomes a clot in the same way, and as a drop and he becomes and then in the same way a mass, then an angel is sent to him who reads the ruh, the spirit gave him. 4 words of command are given to this angel, viz. That he writes down his provision, risk, his lifespan, his deeds, and whether he will be among the wretched or the blessed at judgment. By Allah, there is no deity but He. One of you may work the works of people of the garden till there is a knot but an arm's length between him and it. When that which has been written will outstrip him, so that he works the works of the people of the fire, one of you may do the works of the people of the fire. Till there is a knot but an arm's length between him and it, when that which has been written will overtake him, so that he works the works of the people of the garden and enters it.
Okay, great. Jazakallah khairan for that. Let's get into it. So, first of all, this hadith is narrated by Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. So, Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu was one of the foremost people to accept Islam, one of the first. And he became perhaps one of the most prominent scholars of the Sahaba. So some of the ulama have said that if you look at all the Sahaba, you can see that knowledge amongst them was concentrated amongst 6. So these 6 were the most prominent scholars of the Sahaba. Amongst those 6, knowledge was concentrated between 2 of them. And those 2 were Ali radiallahu anhu, Ali bin Abi Talib, and Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. So those 2 are considered to be amongst the foremost of the ulama of the Sahaba. Of course, there's others as well, like Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. However, he didn't live very long after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for people to take the knowledge that he had. Umar bin Khattab, of course, he was a fiqh as well. But we're talking about amongst the Sahaba who spent time teaching and had an opportunity to do so. So he's considered to be amongst the foremost of the ulama of Sahaba. He settled in Kufa afterwards. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu sent him to the city Kufa. Then when he came afterwards to visit Kufa, he said to Ibn Mas'ud that he has لَقَدْ مَلَأَ هَذِهِ الْقَرْيَةِ عِلْمًا, that he has filled the city with knowledge, because now Kufa became a city of scholars. Ibn Mas'ud had produced all of those scholars. And then Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab was the Khalifa at the time, when he sent Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu to Kufa, he said that لَقَدْ آثَرْتُ بِهِ عَلَى نَفْسِي, that I'm preferring you guys over myself. The people of Kufa is telling them that I'd rather have Ibn Mas'ud with me because he's such a great asset. He's a scholar, and even I rely on him for advice, for wisdom and direction. But I'm giving you preference over something that I would have preferred for myself. So that was Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. He came from very humble beginnings. He wasn't considered to be from a family that had very high status at the time. In fact, his family was very looked down upon. Allah gave him knowledge and Islam, of course, first and foremost, and then he rose to this rank. He was considered so close to the Prophet ﷺ that people thought he was part of the family of the Prophet ﷺ, even though, he wasn't, but people thought that he was. He would oftentimes carry the shoes of the Prophet ﷺ, go get it for him, carry the miswak of the Prophet ﷺ, and that just sort of demonstrated the closeness. Anyway, so this hadith has, you can say, two parts. The first part talks about the formation of man, and the second part talks about predestination. Right? So the first part, as you can see over here, let's see. So it talks about the embryonic development of the human being. This is something that Prophet ﷺ describes. This is something that's mentioned in the Quran, Surah Al-Mu'minun, Surah Al-Hajj as well. We won't go into the details, but basically the Prophet ﷺ describes the various stages in which an embryo develops. And then, so first he says that the embryo spends, so each one of us, our creation comes together. Our bodies form for 40 days as a nutfa. Nutfa just means a drop. Okay, a drop, basically a fertilized egg cell, and then it sort of expands with just some fluid. After that, it becomes an alaqa. Alaqa means something that latches, something that sticks, right? For 40 days, it has that form. Then after that, it becomes a mudgha. Arabic mudgha means to chew, so it looks like a chewed substance. And if you look at pictures of the development of the fetus, you'll see that it does resemble that. Then after that, so 3 days of 40, 40, 40, right, so 120 days, then the angel is sent. The angel breathes the ruh into, Allah Ta'ala sends the angel, Allah sends the angel with the ruh, the soul of the human being. So after those 120 days, then the soul is, basically goes into the human. Right, so that's, okay, so that's what happens. And then the angel says that 4 things are going to happen. The angel basically announces 4 things. What the rizq of the person will be, how much they'll earn. Will they go on to not really earn anything and basically hardly scrape ends meet, or will they become Elon Musk? Well, that will be announced at that time. Well, ajalihi, how long that person will live for. Amalihi, what the person's actions will be, what their deeds will be. Wa shaqiyun aw sa'id. Shaqiyun and sa'id, that will the person end up being for the people of Jannah or the people of Jahannam? Okay, so the angel will announce those 4 things. Then after that, the Prophet ﷺ describes how a person will act like the people of Jannah until there's only a handspan between that person and Jannah. Right? So we can just look at the translation to see. Then what will happen is that what's written in the book will overtake the person. It means that it's already predestined that that person, may Allah protect us, will be for the people of Jahannam. May the people of hell, may Allah protect us. And then the person is acting good. Then suddenly their life takes a sudden turn, they start acting very differently. فَيَسْبِقُ عَلَيْهِ الْكِتَابِ. The book, in other words, the decree, the written record overtakes that person. And then the person starts acting like the people of Jahannam, and then he ends up entering Jahannam. Then similarly, a person will act like the people of Jahannam until there's only a handspan between that person and Jahannam, hell. And then the person suddenly has a big turn of events in their life or a change in how they act. They start acting like the people of Jannah, and then they end up entering Jannah. Okay, let me mention 1 or 2 stories about this, and then we'll discuss some of the details. So there is a very old masjid in Chicago. It's called MTC. It was established in the 60s. So there is this is when I was a kid. So there was a janitor who worked at MCC, and he got injured, or he had some sickness or I don't know, some disease or something. So he was in the hospital. I was very young at the time, so I don't remember too well. He was in the hospital, and then everybody from the community came to visit him. Then many of them came repeatedly, and they visited him often. And then he was in Cook County Hospital, if I'm not mistaken. Cook County is known to be it's a very subsidized hospital within Chicago. The city proper of Chicago. It's subsidized. They oftentimes offer free care. And then hence, obviously, the facilities are not the best. It's very cramped. The ER has a very long waiting room time, or very long wait time. So I mean, that's just how it is. So he was in Cook County. The way that Cook County works is that there's multiple beds in one room. Sometimes two, I don't know if there's more, but anyway, so there are 2 beds in one room. So he was this janitor who had gotten sick or injured or something. So he was in the hospital. And then there was another person on the other bed in the room. And then day and night, people from the masjid were coming and visiting this person, this janitor, and they were just, offering whatever well wishes they could to him. And then, I mean, he obviously, I'm sure, enjoyed the company. And then the other person, Bijara, he didn't have anyone coming and visiting him. The other person was not Muslim, just a random person that happened to be in the same hospital room. There were, remember, 2 beds in one room. So then he was chatting with the janitor, saying that, are you like sort of some leader in your community? Are you the imam? Are you something like that? Are you the founder of your mosque? And then he said, well, no, not any of those things. And then he's like, then what is it? You must be a very prominent person. And he said, well, I'm actually just the janitor. He's like, then why are all these people coming and visiting you then? He said, well, because I'm a Muslim, so then they're Muslim too, so they want to come and see me. So that's why they're seeing me. I'm just a janitor, I don't have any other position. And then he said, and then so the other person said, well, if that's the case, maybe I should become a Muslim too. So then the other person became a Muslim. And then a few days later, that person passed away. Yeah. So that's one story. Here's another story. This one is even crazier. When I was in South Africa, I was there studying for some years. We had visited a place, a suburb of Durban, and then there was a person there who was, he happened to be the imam's son, and that he was perhaps about 30 or in his early 30s, the imam's son. He also had Down syndrome as well. So he was there, and he was doing, his name was Zubair, right? So Zubair is the imam's son. He also has Down syndrome. Hope he's doing okay now. So anyway, so Zubair was always in the masjid. And he had, mashallah, he had a beard, he had a topi, he was wearing shalwar kameez, everything like that. But I mean, he had Down syndrome, so he would sometimes do things that I guess other people would find a little bit funny. So when we got there, we got there. I went with a group of students. We were visiting, and then somebody took out their phone. So Zubair, keep in mind, he's in his early 30s or so, but since he has Down syndrome, he wasn't always. I guess sometimes he would do things that others would find to be a little bit humorous. So one of the students took out their phone, and they were just looking at their phone for a minute. So Zubair went to the person next to him. He slapped him. He started pointing towards that person, and he went like this. So then they're like, oh no, Zubair doesn't like phones. No one can take out their phone when Zubair is around. So then, we knew that, and then Zubair pointed to that guy and he went like this. So then, I mean, obviously he wasn't going to do anything, but then we found it to be a little humorous. So then throughout the whole time, he was doing kind of funny things. I mean, a lot of things. But then, a scholar who was in the masjid says that, yeah, mashallah, we really appreciate Zubair's company. He makes us smile. But let me tell you one thing about him. So they had gone to the house of a community member, and that community member wasn't really coming to the masjid. They were really practicing or anything like that. So they went there to talk to him. So they knocked on the door. Every time anyone would go, Zubair would jump in the car, whether there's room or not, and he would just go along. So Zubair went along. So they knocked on the door of the house, and then the wife answered. And then they said, oh, well, we came here and we wanted to visit your husband. Is he home? And she said, no, he's not home. And then they said, oh, well, okay, that's fine, no problem. Can you just tell him that we came and we're hoping to see him, so maybe next time he can inshallah, we can meet up. So the wife said, they told the wife that, and she says, yeah, sure, I'll let him know whenever he gets home. So they were turning around to leave. So then Zubair just pushed past the wife and just walked into the house. And then he came out of the house gripping the hand of the husband. And then the husband happened to be sitting on the couch watching TV. So he pulled him to the door, and then he presented the husband to the people from the masjid. He's like, Zubair doesn't speak, but then he just sort of like indicated that he's here. And then he went and stood outside again, along with others, just I guess waiting for them to talk to him. So then everybody is really thrown, everyone is really taken aback by what just happened. Like, oh God, what do we do now? And then they're like, I guess one course of action is you just pretend like everything's normal, pretend like nothing weird happened. So they just said, oh, so great to see you. We just wanted to let you know that we're here to visit, and we just wanted to invite you to the masjid. And they just were pretending like everything is cool. Now this guy was very embarrassed. And then he said that, he's like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, I'll come with you. I'll come to the masjid. So then he went. And then afterwards, they're saying that there's a group of people who are going out in the path of Allah for da'wah, so why don't we join them? And then this person actually said, okay, I'll join. Keep in mind, he's a person who perhaps wasn't praying before, wasn't going to the masjid or anything. And then he went out with them for 40 days. He came back right after that he passed away. So he turned around his life, and then right after that he passed away. And then the cause for everything was Zubair, this person who, mashallah, may Allah reward him. He had Down syndrome. Sometimes he would do things that were a little bit outside the scope of what people would normally do in regular social rooms, but mashallah, this is what he prayed about. Yeah. So the hadith says that a person might be acting like the people of Jahannam until there's only a hand span between that person and Jahannam. Then what's decreed in the book overtakes them. And then they start acting like the people of Jannah, and then they enter Jannah. Right? Okay, so those are just some stories about that. Anyway, so some stages in the video. I think we will leave this part. Okay, so regarding this, stages in the video. So generally, in terms of our existence, first there's nothing, because before nothing existed except for Allah. Then Allah Ta'ala created everything. Within that creation part of that creation is our souls. So our souls existed for a long time before we were born. In fact, there's a hadith in Sahih Bukhari that says, وَالْأَرْوَاحُ جُلُودٌ مُجَنَّدًا فَمَا تَعَارَفَ مِنْهَا اخْتَلَفَ وَمَا تَنَاكَرَ اخْتَلَفَ. That souls are like one big group. So there's a couple of different interpretations of this. Again, the hadith is in Sahih Bukhari. Whichever souls were together in Alam al-Arwah, in the realm of the souls, and they were friendly therein, then inside the world, once they come down to the world, however many, millions of years later, then those people tend to get along. Right? That's one interpretation. Has it ever happened that you met somebody you just like them? You don't know why, but they just seem like a cool person. Well, maybe you were friends in Alam al-Arwah, in the realm of the souls. Who knows? Right? وَمَا تَنَاكَرَ اخْتَلَفَ. And souls that didn't get along, when they come down here to the world, then they don't get along. Okay, so then sometimes that happens too. Okay. So sometimes they might say like, oh, this is such a nice guy, why don't you be friends? And you're like, yeah, I can be nice, but yeah, there's just something about him. He's just not clicking with me. Sometimes it happens too. Okay. Anyway, so then there's the realm of the souls. Then after that, after a long time, then the soul is sent to the womb of the mother. And then the soul stays there for some time. Then after some time, then the baby is born. So then you're in the life of this world. Then afterwards, we pass from this world. May Allah make it easy for us, and then we enter this. The stage between, living in this world and being resurrected, meaning the hayat al-barzakh, when we're in the graves. Right? So this can either be something that's very blissful for a person. Hadith that comes in Nam Kanawmat al-Arus, the angels will say to the believers that sleep like a newlywed. When a newlywed goes to sleep, are they happy or are they angry? probably happy, right? They're angry that their food didn't come on time. They ordered biryani, but they said palau. They have to call this caterer. No, they're probably happy. They don't care about those things, right? Okay. So then sleep like a newlywed. That's what it says. Nam kanamatil arus. So it can be nice. It can also be very painful and unfortunate. May Allah Ta'ala protect us from that. So that's the 5th stage of existence. And the 6th stage of existence is then Qiyamah. So Qiyamah, the Day of Judgment, for the believers it'll be just like a fard salah. It won't be very long, it won't be very hard. For other people it can be very difficult and seem very long, sometimes up to 50,000 years long. And the last stage after Qiyamah, of course, is the hereafter. So Jannah and Jannah. So these are the brief stages, in a nutshell. The Hadith specifically talks about this, sort of skips over this, and then talks about like sort of these ones. Okay, so then this is sort of the thing in a nutshell. Now, we're going to skip a little bit of this. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about predestination. So we saw at the end of the Hadith, it says that a person might act like the people of Jannah, their whole life, then they suddenly change, and vice versa as well. So what is that? It says, فَيَسْبِقُ عَلَيْهِ الْكِتَابِ, that what's decreed overtakes that person. So what that seems to us might be that, well, that's not fair. The person was acting like the people of Jannah, then he or she should just stay like that. Why are they changing? Why is the decree overtaking them? So in order to understand this, let's go to this. Okay. So I was saying this yesterday briefly, this is just in a little bit more detail. So in order to really understand predestination, we have to understand these stages of predestination. Okay. So a lot of people have questions about predestination, saying, is that how? We just can't really understand that. We can't really reconcile, that belief with concepts of free will and, how, and fairness and that sort of thing. So anybody who's having difficulty understanding predestination, they probably don't have difficulty understanding the knowledge of Allah. So we know the knowledge of Allah is eternal, right? Everybody understands that. We know that if Allah exists, that means He knows everything. So what predestination basically is just a reflection of number one. The first level of taqdeer is predestination, is taqdeer ilmi. The eternal knowledge of Allah. What that means is knowledge of the past, knowledge of the present, and of course knowledge of the future as well. And that means that Allah Ta'ala doesn't just know the future in general, but knows each person's individual future. So what that means is that Allah Ta'ala knows what choice each person is going to take in their life. Allah knows that, if we choose to go to sleep at 8 o'clock, you choose to go to sleep at 9 o'clock tonight. Who's making that choice? It's me and you, but we're making the choice, but did Allah know about it? Allah knows our future, right? So we're making the choice. So essentially, Allah has eternal knowledge. And this knowledge is basically predestination. Okay? So this is called the first level of qadr, and taqdeer is taqdeer ilmi. Ilm means knowledge of Allah. Then after that, there's a hadith that says that عن عبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كتب الله مقادير الخلائق قبل أن يخلق السماوات والأرض ب50,000 سنة. That 50,000 years before anything was created, Allah wrote down the destiny of all creation. Now keep in mind, did Allah Ta'ala know the destiny prior to that 50,000 year point? Okay, there's a definitive point. Okay, 50,000 years before Allah Ta'ala created things, Allah wrote down whatever was going to happen with people. Did Allah know it before that point? The knowledge of Allah is pre-eternal, it's also eternal as well. Right? So Allah always knew it, and He also knows what's going to happen. Of course. So did Allah Ta'ala find out anything new at this point? Allah already knew it. The only difference was that Allah Ta'ala wrote it down at that time. Is everyone okay with this? Okay, great. So we understand that this is basically a reflection of this. So Allah knew everything that was going to happen, then eventually at some point Allah Ta'ala wrote it down. Then now this hadith that we're reading right now, that when a person is developing in their mom's womb, then the angel comes and announces how long the person is going to live, what their actions are going to be, what else? What they're going to earn, and whether they're going to be for the people of Jannah or Jahannam. May Allah protect us from Jannah. So the angel is going to announce those things. Did I use this slide? Yeah. Okay. So this is the third level. So this happens in the womb. Now, did Allah already know it before the angel announced it? Of course Allah knew it. Was it already written down before that too? Well, of course it was written down as well. So what's the purpose of this one then? That it's announced at the time of a person's conception.
You just gave it to the angel and then so the angel can deliver.
Well, the angel sort of, yeah. But what's the purpose if it's already known from before? It's already written from before. Well, anyone want to take a guess? Give them a chance to improve? Well, Allah already knew what they were going to do. It just makes it more relevant, right? Okay. It just makes it more relevant for each individual person. So if I say that, make sure that no one in the parking lot is double parked. Okay, I say that. Then I go to Brother Ali and I say, Ali, make sure you're not double parked. Then maybe he'll take it a little bit more seriously, right? And he's not worried, he's okay. But when I come and tell him individually, then doesn't it make it more relevant for him? It does, right? So let's say Imam Habib announces that we all should make sure that we, I don't know, come to Salah on time. And then he goes to you individually and he says, oh, for you specifically, I really want you to come for Salah on time. I'll be waiting, I'll be watching to see if you're there. So then it's more relevant than a general announcement, right? So now Allah already knew it from before. That's taqdeer ilmi. The second one, taqdeer lawhi, from lawh al-mahfuz. Allah Ta'ala wrote it in that tablet. Allah already wrote it. But then now, why is it announced when you're in the womb of your mother, taqdeer rahimi? Well, it's just more relevant for me and you because it's an individual announcement rather than a general announcement. So we're okay with this, right? Okay. Now number 4, taqdeer sanawi. What some scholars say the 15th night of Sha'ban, others say Laylatul Qadr in Ramadan, whatever it is, Allah dictates whatever is going to happen in that year. I would hear about this growing up and I would say, what? That doesn't make sense. Allah already knew what was going to happen. How is that Allah decides what's going to happen? That's actually what was told to me as a kid. Allah is going to decide what's going to happen during this year, so you have to make sure you're really good. Because Allah is going to decide on this day what's going to happen to you. So I was confused by that, but I didn't really have the tools to understand much more than that. But then I realized that, okay, well that doesn't make sense because Allah already knew what was going to happen from before, right? So then what's the relevance of something like this, taqdeer sanawi? And just, again, making it more relevant for that particular year. And Allah Ta'ala announces in that year, or the angels announce in that particular year on behalf of the command of Allah Ta'ala, that what's going to happen. So it was already written from before. Of course, in the Surah Al-Mahfuz, it was already written in 2023, this is what's going to happen. But then if there's a specific announcement made at 2023 as opposed to so many millions or whatever years before, then it's just more relevant, isn't it? So that's taqdeer sanawi. That's the 4th level. The 5th level is taqdeer yawmi. Yawm in Arabic means day. So every single day, Allah Ta'ala raises some people, Allah Ta'ala does different things. So that's taqdeer happens on a daily basis. But this is going to be a reflection of this. So all of these, 2, 3, 4, and 5, are all a reflection of this. So if a person has an understanding of number 1, that Allah knows everything, then we will probably be able to understand all of these things. Now the question is, what about free will? Well, again, it goes back to the same thing. Who's making that choice? Is it the person or is Allah Ta'ala forcing them to make the choice? It's the person. So that each of us make our individual choices, whatever those are. Does Allah already know about those choices? Because remember, this first one, taqdeer ilmi, Allah knows the future in addition to everything else. So Allah knows what we're going to individually choose, right? What we're individually going to do. Allah already knows that. So Allah knows the choices that we're going to make. Okay. So does that imply that we're not able to make the choices ourselves? We're still making the choices ourselves. Right? So do we understand the difference or how there's not a contradiction between free will and predestination? Okay. Oftentimes people will ask, well, if it's already determined whether I'm going to go to Jannah or Jahannam, then how about I just do nothing? Okay, well, it doesn't work like that, right? Because you're going to make those choices yourself, and based on those choices, it's going to lead you in one direction or another, right? So that's sort of basically a misunderstanding of the whole system. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Any questions on this? Because I know this is a kind of a difficult topic. Yeah. Okay, that's actually the next slide, so that's coming. Okay, there's a question over here.
Initially you explained that one of the things that Allah makes clear is possibility so, and then you give an example of how it done with the master.
You okay?
How does Allah choose if you don't want to count this with what you have? So how does that translate?
You said there might be countless things that, I didn't hear that last part.
So, you said that in the middle of the room when he comes,
Yeah.
and then either the person is going to go to Jannah or
Right.
how does Allah choose for those people that they eventually not get an opportunity to go to Jannah?
Yeah. So the question is, how does Allah choose basically for those people if they're going to end up going to Jannah or Jahannam, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the gist of it is that it's not, we wouldn't say that Allah is choosing for that person. It's a person choosing for themselves. In other words, by doing actions that lead one place or another place. Allah already knows what they're going to choose now. Right? So we wouldn't say Allah chooses for them, because if we phrase it in that way, then that probably, it seems to imply that, well, the people are not choosing for themselves. But then they are, right? They're doing their own actions. They have their own like sort of volition, their own agency, they're able to do that. So Allah knows what they're going to do. We would rather say that than choosing for them. Is that okay? Yeah. Any questions from the sister side regarding this? Okay? Okay. So now the question is, what about dua? So I anticipated that, so it's not directly connected, but whatever. I figured someone was going to ask, so I put the slide in. What about dua? So what do we do for that? Does dua change your tabdeel or not? Okay, so what we would say, this is a very beautiful poem that I put in, I think Multala Zabidi. It says that تَكُونُ مَعَ الْعِصْيَانِ رَبِّ غَافِرٍ. Just by a show of hands, how many people can understand Arabic? Okay, we have 3 or 4 people. Okay, that's fine. I wasn't expecting everyone to, so I was going to translate it anyway, but the actual poem is a lot more beautiful than the way that I'll translate it, so just wanted to see. Okay. So, تقول مع العصيان ربي غافر صدقت ولكن غافر بالمشيئة. That a person will say, while disobeying Allah, that my Lord is the most forgiving. That's correct, that's true. However, Allah is forgiving by His choice. So He desires, He chooses who to forgive who not to. وَرَبُّكَ رَزَّاقٌ كَمَا هُوَ غَافِرٌ. Your Lord is the one who gives rizq, who sustains, just as He is forgiving. فَلِمَ لَمْ تُصَدِّقْ فِيهِمَا بِالسَّوِيَّةِ. So why is it that you don't treat those two equally? فَإِنَّكَ تَرْجُو الْعَفْوَ مِنْ غَيْرِ تَوْبَةٍ وَلَسْتَ بِرَاجِعِ الرِّزْقِ إِلَّا بِحِيلَةٍ. That we, okay, keep in mind no one individual is being addressed, but it says you. So a person will want forgiveness without repenting. However, a person does not try to gain rizq, sustenance, without trying for it. على أنه بالرزق كفل نفسه, that Allah has taken it upon Himself to provide everyone. وَلِكُلٍّ وَلَمْ يَكْفُلْ لِكُلٍّ بِجَنَّةٍ. Allah has not taken it upon Himself to give Jannah to everyone. So, okay, so what does this mean? Basically means that, actually, let me explain this, then I'll come back to this. So the idea is that, the question is, what about dua? Does dua change taqdeer or not? We'll say for everything that happens, there's 2 types of causes. There's external causes, and there's, we can say, inner causes. Or let's say outer causes and inner causes. Outer cause for something is that, You passed the exam because you studied a lot. That's a lahiri sabab. Sabab batini, inner cause would be that you made a lot of dua for the exam, or your mom made dua for you to pass the exam, and then you ended up passing it because of that. So both these outer causes and inner causes, they work in conjunction with one another, meaning they work in tandem. They're both simultaneously at play. Is everyone understanding that? Okay? So let's say that, remember yesterday I was talking about how a person might make a dua for something, and instead Allah Ta'ala yasrifu anhum min su'i mithlan, Allah Ta'ala averts some calamity from that person due to the dua, right? Okay, so for example, one time last year it had snowed a little bit, and then I was pulling up to an intersection, a T-junction, and then my car started to skid. And then it was skidding, I was hitting the brakes, but it wasn't stopping, and by the time I got to the intersection, the car wasn't stopping. We had a red light, and it was a live intersection, meaning and then I looked and there was a bus coming. And then I just started to take the shot because I said, well, there's nothing I can do. My car is not stopping and there's a bus coming right at me. So, I mean, there's nothing really I can do. But then it just so happened that the car stopped basically an inch before the bus hit me. So the bus was like an inch away. So it was going through the intersection. My car was, the red light was red, but I couldn't do anything to stop the car because of the ice and the snow. So then the car went into, I'm from Chicago by the way, so there's a lot of that. So the car went into the intersection, the bus was coming, and then I saw the bus coming. It just so happened that by the time the car got to the middle of the intersection, the end of the bus had just passed, like maybe 6 inches in front of me. So it just missed me. And then, now there's an outer cause for that. Maybe you could say, well, the force of friction was working and then that stopped the car from going there. Or maybe I was making dua for something and then Allah said, well, instead of that, let me just give you something else. Let me save you from this accident. Okay, so do we see how there's an outer cause, which is what? Maybe, I don't know, friction or something, or the brakes beginning to work for the car. And then there's an inner cause. And what is that? Or a hidden cause. What would that be? Maybe a dua that I made. I didn't ever make dua not to get hit by a bus. Well, maybe I should, but I didn't make that dua. I probably made dua for something else, but instead Allah gave me this. Right? Okay, so that's the hidden cause. Do we understand? So now, so is dua a cause for things? Does dua bring things about? Answer is yes. So why did you pass that exam? Because you made dua for it. You made dua to pass that exam. That's the inner cause or the hidden cause. There's an outer cause, which is the fact that you studied. Okay? Now, so just like studying brings about the result of passing the exam, or doing well in the interview, or whatever it is, similarly, the inner cause, which is dua, for example, I guess we say an exam or an interview because it's an easy example, then that's also the cause for you doing well in your interview or your exam or whatever. So now if you say, what if I don't do dua? Then could the same thing still happen? Well, that question perhaps reflects not understanding the issue as a whole. Can you say, well, if I don't prepare for the interview, I don't prepare the exam, can I still do well? What would the answer be? Probably not. Right? Because why? Because studying is a cause for success on the exam. Right? Is everyone okay with that? Similarly, dua is a cause for success on the exam as well. It's a cause, just like everything else. Right? So it's sabab. Right? We have a sabab lahiri, a sabab batini, outer cause and an inner cause. So now, can you not do dua and the same thing happen? Well, no, because dua is the thing that brings about that result. Are we okay with that? Great. Okay, so then now where does dua fall in terms of taqdeer? Where does dua fall in terms of predestination? Well, just like Allah Ta'ala, let's say Allah Ta'ala destined that you would pass the USMLE, or you do well on your MCAT, or that you did well on the ACT or the SAT. Allah destined that. Okay? Allah Ta'ala also destined the cause as well, which is what? You studied for the ACT. You studied for your board exam, whatever. Allah Ta'ala destined that as well. And that cause bring about the result. Okay, is everyone okay with this right now? Okay, similarly, Allah Ta'ala also destined, and what we said is that means Allah Ta'ala knew that you were going to do it. Allah Ta'ala also destined that you're going to make dua for that thing. And the result is contingent upon that cause, which is dua. Are we okay with that? So does dua change the taqdeer, change the predestination? No, dua is part of the taqdeer. So just like Allah Ta'ala destined that you would study and do well, right, the cause and the outcome, similarly Allah Ta'ala destined or knew that you would do dua, you would do well based on the dua. Are we okay with that? So dua doesn't change taqdeer. It's not that these two things are at loggerheads with one another. Dua is part of the taqdeer. Okay? So that's how we reconcile the two, dua and taqdeer. As for this thing, same thing, forgiveness. Allah Ta'ala destined that we would be forgiven, and what was the cause for that? Make dua to be forgiven. Right? So kind of the same thing. Okay. So that was what I wanted to say about taqdeer. I think with that, it's 43. Okay, so we have time to start the next one. Let's quickly move on to the next hadith, inshallah ta'ala. The next hadith is, the hadith is short, the discussion is long. Well, hopefully we'll finish this one before the end of the day, inshallah. Not before also, but before the end of the day. The next ones after that, hadith number 6 and onwards, we'll just go a little bit fast, inshallah. Okay, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, everyone can open up to page 11 in the book. عن أم المؤمنين أم عبد الله عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. رواه البخاري ومسلم في رواية مسلم من عمل عملا ليس عليه أمرنا فهو رد. Okay, translation, if anyone can read it, inshallah. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Just loud and clear. Someone wants to hand the mic, you can use. Yeah. Sure. Okay.
I can just go.
Yeah, sure.
It is narrated on the authority of the mother of the believers, Abdullah Aisha radiallahu anha, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, whosoever introduces into this affair of ours, into Islam, something that does not belong to it, is to be rejected. According to the version in Muslim, it reads, whosoever works a work which has for it no command of ours is to be rejected.
So very briefly, this hadith is narrated by Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha. We know that she was the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, extremely close to him, very beloved to him. She also was one of the foremost of the scholars of this ummah. Right? Just like we said that with Ibn Mas'ud, Aisha radiallahu anha as well. She is a very prolific narrator of hadith. She narrates 2,210 hadith. She lived basically her whole life in Medina. It does 2210. She lived her whole life in Medina, and she passed away in the year 57 or 58 after Hijrah. There's difference in opinion about when she passed away, 57 or 58. And then she was a very prominent scholar. She was basically like a resource or recourse for the other Sahaba. Whenever they would have any difficult issue, that they would pose it to Aisha radiallahu anha. Not only was she a scholar of hadith, she was a scholar of fiqh as well. And then many a times, she would have very unique, keen juristic insight into things. So she's definitely a model of knowledge for us. And everything else as well, but particularly knowledge. Okay, so Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha. She, of course, is the daughter of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, the best friend of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the first Khalif as well. So this hadith is extremely important. In fact, if we recall, when Imam Abu Dawud mentioned some of the most foundational hadith, or actually it wasn't Imam Abu Dawud, but it was some others that mentioned the most foundational hadith, this is one of them. So this is a big chunk of our deen. So this hadith talks about the importance of staying away from innovation. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to stop in about 5 minutes or so for Asr, and then we'll just continue the discussion afterwards. Okay, now innovation, I'm sure all of us have heard the term before, bid'ah. Generally, in, at least in work, in school, innovation is considered to be a good thing. My father-in-law recently got, or maybe like a year or so ago, he got an award from his company called the Innovator of the Year. So, what if we gave that to somebody in the masjid, the Innovator of the Year? Would that have a good connotation or not? Probably not. But what about at work? Sounds pretty good, right? So then why is it that within our Islamic context, although it's considered to be a good thing outside of Islam, like in work or something, but it's a bad thing or it has a negative connotation. What makes bid'ah so bad? What do you guys think? What's the big deal? Yeah.
You're adding on to an already perfect thing. Right?
There you go. Okay, so then Allah Ta'ala revealed, Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. Today I perfected for you, completed for you your religion. So if you're completing something or adding on to something that's already complete, then what does it imply? I mean, you'd only add on to something or improve something in order to fix any deficiency. So that's one aspect, but there's perhaps a greater aspect as well. One guess, we don't have that much time, I'll just give it one more guess. Yeah.
Potentially changing the foundation and making the religion unstable.
There you go. Okay, very good. Changing the foundation. So yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say. Let me just sort of give a little bit of background. So within previous nations that came, bid'ah might not have been something that was so bad. Still bad, but maybe not so bad. Because what would happen? If the Prophet would come, whoever the Prophet was, alayhi salam, and the Prophet would teach the people, and okay, they would do what he said, or maybe not do what he said, but afterwards, then if the Prophet passed away, most of the time what happened is the people would mess things up. Okay, then another Prophet would come. The next Prophet would say, oh, you messed everything up, this is how it's supposed to be. So another Prophet would come, and that Prophet would basically correct what happened before. Okay, so this is what happened with the previous nations. Right, there was this line of prophetic succession that come. What about with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Who's the Prophet to come after him? Well, there's no Prophet. So what does that mean? If somebody messes something up or changes something, then what? Well, then there's no one to come afterwards. So that's why Islam has set very, very strict restrictions on adding or changing anything to the religion, just to preserve that form in which the deen came. Because if we alter it in any way, then it can really change the religion. Okay, let's look at one or two examples and we'll stop with this. Okay, and here's one example. This is from the New Catholic Encyclopedia. The formulation of one God in three persons was not solidly established, certainly not fully assimilated into the Christian life and its profession of faith prior to the end of the 4th century. Okay, so what happened with that? Well, if we just opened the door a little bit. So sometimes the things that Islam emphasizes that you can't do that due to it being a bid'ah or something, sometimes they seem inconsequential. Sometimes they seem minute. It's not really a big deal if I do it. But the idea is that if you just open the door a little bit, then more and more things can get out, more things can squeeze in depending on how you look at it, and then the fundamental, like the foundation of the faith can be changed. So is this what Isa Islam preached? Well, obviously not. But then if there's room for addition, then eventually it can morph into something that is very different from what originally was taught by the Prophet. Right? Has anyone heard of the Alawis? The Alawis are in Syria primarily. The ruling class of Syria, actually, they're Alawi as well. They believe in a triune God. Allah Ta'ala, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Ali. Right? So this is three gods in one. So did they initially start off as Muslim? Well, sort of, I guess. I mean, that's how they have the concept of Allah and Muhammad and everything like that. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But then what happened? I mean, no one stopped the bid'ah right at the beginning. And then it morphed into a whole new religion. Even the Shia say that they're outside the fold of Islam. Ismailis, and same type of thing. Right? So that Islam's emphasis on closing that door, not even allowing a little bit to sort of creep up, is just to sort of preserve the form of the religion. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. Okay, so you know what? We'll stop for Asr over here. We can give the adhan, we can pray the sunnah as well. There's a hadith that says, Rahimullah wa an salla qabla al-asri arba'an. May Allah have mercy on that person. This is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mercy. May Allah have mercy on that person who performs 4 rakat before Asr. So inshallah you can do wudu, prayer 4 rakat before Asr, and then 4 o'clock will be Jum'at. Then we'll resume this discussion after that, inshallah. Then we'll end